My name is James Harlow. I'm 64 years old. I run 5 miles every Tuesday and Thursday. I manage my own investment portfolio, and last November, my son stood in my kitchen and told me I was losing my mind. I want you to remember that part. I spent 31 years as a structural engineer. I built bridges. Not metaphorically, actual bridges. The kind that carry 18-wheelers across rivers and don't collapse. I retired at 62. Not because I had to, not because my hands shook or my memory slipped, but because I had planned for it. I had been quietly, methodically planning for a lot of things for a very long time. That's the thing about engineers. We don't panic. We build systems. And when we see a load-bearing wall starting to crack, we don't wait for the ceiling to fall. We shore it up before anyone else even notices the fracture. My wife, Carol, passed away 4 years ago. Breast cancer. She was 58. We had 33 years together, and I would give back every bridge I ever built to have one more Tuesday morning with her, drinking bad coffee on the back porch and arguing about whether the neighbor's dog was actually aggressive or just enthusiastic. I still make 2 cups sometimes. Old habits. After Carol died, I stayed in our house. Our house, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, half an acre, backing up to a small lake in central Virginia. She picked that house. She planted the garden along the east fence. I was not going to leave it. Some of my son's friends apparently told him I should downsize, that the house was too big for one person, that I was rattling around in it like a marble in a shoebox. My son passed this along to me with the tone of someone delivering medical advice. I told him I appreciated the concern and that I had no intention of going anywhere. He nodded and let it go. That was 2 years before Thanksgiving. My son married his wife 3 years ago. I will be honest with you. I tried. I genuinely tried. She was not warm toward me from the beginning, but I chalked it up to nerves, to the natural awkwardness of becoming part of a family where the mother was already gone and the father was still quietly grieving. I gave her time. I invited her to things. I asked questions about her job, her family, her interests. She worked in marketing. She had 2 parents who lived in Ohio. Her father had retired from manufacturing. Her mother taught elementary school. They were, by her account, wonderful people. I had no reason to doubt that. The first Thanksgiving after they married, we ate here, at my house. I cooked. My son's wife offered to bring a dish and showed up with a store-bought pie, still in the box, with the price sticker on it, which is absolutely fine. I don't care about that, but she spent most of the meal on her phone and left before I'd finished cleaning the kitchen. I told myself she was tired. I told myself it was an adjustment. The second Thanksgiving, same arrangement. She complained, quietly but not quietly enough, that the drive from their apartment was 40 minutes and that it wasn't fair that they always had to come to me. My son brought this to me privately, apologetically, and I said that the door was open, that if they wanted to host, I would come to them. She did not want to host. She wanted me to understand that the drive was an inconvenience. I understood. I didn't change anything, because there was nothing to change. This was my home. This was where we had always gathered. This was where Carol's garden was. The third Thanksgiving last November is the one that changed everything. They arrived at noon. My son hugged me at the door the way he always does, tight and genuine, and I want to be clear that whatever happened after, I know my son loves me. He does. But love and backbone are 2 different things. And my son had been slowly handing his over to his wife since about 6 months after the wedding, in small increments, the way you don't notice a tide going out until your feet are dry. His wife came in behind him, said hello without looking at me, and walked directly to the living room, like she was appraising the square footage. I had spent 2 days cooking. Turkey, stuffing made from scratch, sweet potato casserole with the pecans on top, the way my son has liked since he was 9 years old. I had set the table with the good china, Carol's china, because that's what we do on Thanksgiving. Dinner was fine. My son and I talked about the college football game on in the background, about a documentary we'd both watched, about a fishing trip we'd been half planning for 2 years. His wife ate quietly, which I had come to understand was either contentment or strategy, and I could never quite tell which. After we finished, After I'd cleared the plates and we'd moved to the living room with our coffee, she set her cup down on the side table without a coaster and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Decided, like she had rehearsed this. She said her parents were struggling. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said her father's pension had been cut, that her parents were behind on their mortgage, that they had been looking at their options for several months now. I said that sounded very stressful. She said they had decided the best solution was for her parents to move in somewhere with family, somewhere stable, somewhere with space. I looked at my son. He was looking at the floor. She was looking at me. I set my coffee down. I said, slowly and without any particular heat, that I understood she was in a difficult position, and that I was sorry her parents were facing hardship, and that I was not in a position to have her parents move into my home. She blinked. She said, "This house has 3 bedrooms." I said, "Yes, and I live in one of them." She said, "The other 2 are empty." I said, "They're not empty. They're mine." My son cleared his throat and said, "Dad, can you just think about it? It would just be temporary. They're good people." I said, I was sure they were good people. I said that was not the point. I said this was my home, that I had lived here for 22 years, that I had built a life here, and that I was not opening it up to people I had met twice because it was logistically convenient. His wife said, "You're being selfish." I looked at her for a moment. I said, "I'm going to ask you not to speak to me that way in my home." She said, "It's a lot of house for one person." I said, "It's exactly the right amount of house for me." My son said, "Dad, come on. You're not getting any younger. It might actually be good to have people here. What if something happens and there's no one around?" And there it was. What if something happens? I had been waiting for that sentence. In my experience, that sentence is never about concern. That sentence is the first stone of a wall they're trying to build around you, a wall that looks like care from the outside and feels like a cage from the inside. My son did not mean it cruelly. I genuinely believe that. But he had been coached. I could hear it in the phrasing. It was too smooth, too practiced, like he'd said it out loud several times before he got here. I said very calmly, "I appreciate your concern. The answer is no." His wife stood up. She was still holding her wine glass. She'd refilled it twice during dinner and once after. She said, "Do you have any idea how hard it is to watch you sit here in this enormous house while my parents are drowning? Do you even care about this family?" I said, "I care about my family very much." She said, "Then act like it." I said, "I am? This is my house." The answer is no. I'd like to ask you both to respect that. She said something I won't repeat here, and then she threw the wine glass. Not at the wall, not at the floor, at me. It hit my shoulder and shattered, and the wine, it was a red. A cab she'd brought herself went across my shirt and up the side of my neck, and one of the fragments caught the back of my hand and opened a cut about an inch long. Not deep, but it bled. It bled onto Carol's tablecloth that I'd folded back onto the side table after dinner. The room went completely silent. My son said her name, just her name, in a voice I had never heard from him before, low and shocked and horrified. She was breathing hard, staring at me, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Not regret, more like recalculation. I stood up. I looked at my hand. I pressed the hem of my shirt against the cut. I looked at my son and I said, very quietly, "I'd like you both to leave now." He started to say something. I held up my hand, the uncut one, and I said, "Please." They left. My son tried to turn back at the door, and I closed it before he could find the words. I stood in my living room for about 30 seconds. Then I took out my phone and I sent a text to my attorney. Her name is Patricia Webb. She's been my attorney for 11 years, handled Carol's estate, helped me set up my living trust, and has the disposition of a chess player, patient, deliberate, always thinking 3 moves ahead. I had spoken with Patricia 6 weeks earlier, for reasons I'll explain shortly. The text I sent her was 4 words. It said, "Phase 1 is complete." Let me back up. About 8 months before that Thanksgiving, I noticed something. It started small, A conversation my son had with me about whether I'd thought about getting my affairs in order, which was a strange thing for a 40-year-old man to say to his perfectly healthy father over lunch. Then came a conversation about whether I had a plan for the house long term. Then his wife, at a birthday dinner in August, asked me very casually what kind of estate planning I had done, whether everything was straightforward. She said she asked because her firm handled a client once whose parent hadn't planned well, and it created a lot of unnecessary complications. I said I had a trust and a will, and that everything was very organized. She smiled and said that was wonderful. I went home that night and called Patricia the next morning. I didn't go in with accusations. I went in with a question. If someone were trying to position themselves to influence or contest a will or access assets prematurely, what would that typically look like? Patricia, to her credit, did not ask me why I was asking. She answered the question thoroughly and then said, "Is there something specific you'd like to put in place?" I said yes. I said I wanted everything airtight. Over the following 6 weeks, we restructured my living trust. The house went into the trust with specific language about occupancy. My investment accounts were reorganized so that any access attempt would trigger an automatic notification to Patricia's office. We established a digital record of my cognitive health. I underwent a voluntary neuropsychological evaluation in September, which I passed with what the evaluating psychologist called results consistent with someone 15 years younger. That report was notarized and added to my file. Patricia's phrase for this process was building the fortress. I liked that. It felt appropriate. I also had a security camera system installed, not prominently, subtly, the way a structural engineer thinks about load distribution, spread across key points, recording continuously. The living room, the front entry, the driveway. I told no one. 2 weeks after the camera install, I noticed something on the overnight footage. My son had a key to my house for emergencies. He'd always had one. At 2:17 on a Wednesday morning, the driveway camera recorded his car pulling up. He came inside. He went to my home office. He was there for 11 minutes. He left. Nothing was taken. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but I have a small, fireproof filing cabinet in my office where I keep physical copies of financial documents. When I checked it the next morning, I could see it had been gone through, not ransacked carefully, deliberately, and put back. The way someone goes through something when they don't want you to know they were there. The kind of careful that an engineer notices and a trusting father might not. I didn't call my son. I called Patricia. She said, "Good. Now we have the footage. Don't touch anything. Don't change the locks yet. Let's see if there's more." There was more. 3 weeks later, I received a notification from my brokerage, the automatic alert Patricia and I had set up. Someone had attempted to access my investment account using my social security number, my date of birth, and my mother's maiden name. The attempt failed because Patricia had added a secondary authentication layer that required a code sent to her office phone. The IP address of the attempted access was traced by the cybersecurity consultant Patricia brought in to the apartment my son and his wife shared. I sat with that information for a long time. I want to be careful here, because I know how this sounds. My son, my boy, who I coached Little League for 3 seasons, who I drove to every robotics competition in middle school, who sat with me in the hospital the night Carol died, and held my hand in the waiting room like he was 8 years old again. My son was trying to access my money at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night from his apartment. I don't know if he initiated it or if he sat next to his wife while she did it. I don't know which is worse. Patricia said, "Do not confront them. Not yet. Let them think they've found the edge of the wall. Let them test it a little more. Document everything." So I did. And they kept pushing, slowly, carefully, in ways that were individually deniable but collectively formed a very clear picture. The questions about my health, the comments about the house being a lot to manage, the suggestion, floated by my son in October, that maybe I should let someone help with my finances, that he could set up a joint account for household expenses. I said I'd think about it. I did not think about it. And then came Thanksgiving. And then came the wine glass. I cleaned up the glass myself. I took photographs of the blood stain on my shirt and on Carol's tablecloth. I photographed my hand. I drove myself to the urgent care clinic 8 minutes from my house and had the cut cleaned and closed with 2 small steri strips. The attending physician documented the injury. I told him exactly what had happened. He made a note in the record. I asked for a copy of that note. He printed one for me. On the drive home, I called Patricia. She had already seen my text. She said, "Are you all right?" I said I was. She said, "Good. I'm filing the incident report with the police tonight using the camera footage. Don't post anything. Don't call your son. Don't respond to anything they send you." She paused. "James, we're done with the fortress phase. Now we go to work." The police came to my house the following morning. Not to arrest anyone not that day, but to take my statement and collect the footage. The officer who handled it was thorough, professional, and did not treat me like a confused old man, which I appreciated more than I said. I gave him the footage, the photographs, the urgent care documentation, and a written statement. He said they would be in contact with my son and his wife. I know my son received that call, because he called me 40 minutes later. He was crying. I had not heard my son cry since his mother's funeral. It was one of the hardest things I have ever sat through, and I have sat through a lot of hard things. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't know she was going to do that. He said he should have stopped it before it got that far. That he had felt things spinning out of his control for months. That she had convinced him I was slipping, that I was going to make decisions that would hurt me, that they were trying to protect me. He said it with the confused certainty of someone who had been told a story so many times he started to believe it without ever checking whether it was true. I let him talk. I did not cry. I am not a man who cries easily, and this was not a moment for it. When he finished, I said, "Marcus, I need you to listen to me carefully." He said, "Okay." I said, "I am not slipping. I am not losing my mind. I am not incapable of managing my own life or my own home or my own finances. I never have been. I know that because I have documentation. In September, I had a full neuropsychological evaluation. I passed comprehensively. I have had that on record for 3 months. Whatever your wife told you, whatever story she built to justify what has been happening, I need you to understand that it was not based in reality. It was based in what she wanted. Silence. I said, "I also need you to know that I am aware of the access attempt on my investment account. I know when it happened, and I know where it came from." A longer silence. He said, "Dad," I said, "I'm not asking you to explain right now. I'm telling you what I know, and I'm telling you that I love you, and that I am deeply disappointed, and that whatever happens next will depend entirely on what you choose to do." He asked what that meant. I said Patricia's firm would be reaching out to his wife's attorney within the week regarding the incident on Thanksgiving and certain other matters. I said that he personally was not named in any legal action at this time, and that I intended to keep it that way if at all possible. I said the rest was up to him. He said, "Is there anything I can do?" I said, "You can start by asking yourself whether you actually believe your father is the problem here, or whether you've been so close to something for so long that you stopped being able to see it clearly." He had no answer for that. I told him I needed some time, and that I would reach out when I was ready, and that I loved him. Then I hung up. His wife retained an attorney within 48 hours. Her attorney sent a letter to Patricia suggesting that the events of Thanksgiving were the result of emotional escalation and that my account of what occurred was a mischaracterization. Patricia sent back the camera footage with a timestamp key and a note that said, among other things, that we looked forward to continuing the conversation. The assault charge was filed. I will not get into the details of how that process unfolded because it is still ongoing, and Patricia has advised me to be careful about what I say publicly. What I will tell you is that the footage is clear, that the medical documentation is clear, and that the record of the account access attempt, subpoenaed as part of a separate civil matter, is also very clear. What I will also tell you is this. About 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, 7 pages, on yellow legal pad paper. It was from my son. Not typed, not texted, handwritten, the way his mother used to write her letters. Which I don't think is a coincidence. He wrote about the last 2 years. about how he had watched his wife systematically reframe every interaction he had with me, how she had told him repeatedly that my independence was stubbornness, that my clear-headedness was denial, that my refusal to open my home was isolation behavior. He wrote that he had wanted to believe she was acting from love, that she genuinely cared about me, and that somewhere in the middle of believing that, he had stopped actually looking at me to check if it was true. He wrote that the night the police called, he sat in their apartment and thought about the robotics competition in 6th grade, the one where his team's robot malfunctioned in the first round, and he cried in the parking lot, and how I had put my arm around him and said that the result of any single event is never the full measure of what you've built. He said he had been thinking about that a lot. He wrote that he was not asking me to forgive him on any particular timeline. He wrote that he understood if I needed distance. He wrote that he was going to start seeing a therapist, that he had made an appointment the week before, and that he thought he had some things to work through about his mother's death, that he had not properly processed, and that he thought that had made him more susceptible to the narrative his wife had constructed. He may be right about that. Grief makes you porous. It finds the cracks. He signed it. Your son, who loves you and is deeply ashamed. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the fireproof cabinet with everything else. Not as evidence, as something else. As something I'm not ready to name yet, but that I haven't been able to throw away. I am not going to tell you that everything is fine, because it isn't. I am not going to tell you that I bounced back easily, because I haven't. I still make 2 cups of coffee some mornings. I still sit on the back porch and look at Carol's garden, which I have been maintaining by myself through 4 winters now, because I am not ready to stop. Some nights I sit in my living room and I think about my son as a 9-year-old, patiently waiting for the sweet potato casserole with the pecans on top, and it costs me something I don't have a precise name for. But I want to be very clear about what I am not. I am not confused. I am not frail. I am not someone to be managed, maneuvered around, or quietly boxed in. I am 64 years old, and I run 5 miles twice a week, and I built bridges for 3 decades, and I planned this entire thing down to the last timestamp on the last camera before anyone in that conversation even knew there was a plan. I still have the house. I still have the lake. Carol's garden came back this spring, the peonies especially, which she always said were impossible to kill if you just left them alone and trusted them to do what they were made to do. She was right about that. She was right about most things. I have been alone in this house for 4 years, and I want to say something to anyone watching who might be in a similar position, who might have someone in their life treating their solitude like a problem to be solved, their age like a liability, their preferences like symptoms. What I want to say is this: your home is yours. Your money is yours. Your life, the one you built, the one you paid for, the one you wake up in every morning, is yours. The fact that a room is empty is not an invitation. The fact that you are older is not a diminishment. The fact that you are alone does not mean you are helpless. And the moment someone uses your aloneness as a reason to insert themselves into your decisions, pay attention. That is not love. Love does not require you to be smaller to justify itself. I am not a warning. I am not a cautionary tale. I am a 64-year-old engineer who built a fortress before anyone thought to attack it. And I am telling you, if I can do it, from inside a grief I thought was going to hollow me out permanently, so can you. Build the fortress before you need it. Know your people. Keep your records. Trust your own mind. My phone is charged. My camera system is running. My attorney is 3 clicks away. And I am still here. If this story is something you needed to hear today, I hope you'll leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you know someone who's going through something like this, who might need to hear that they are not alone and they are not invisible, share this with them. That's the whole point of being here. Take care of yourselves. More next week.